Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Rich Stories, where wealth, secrets, and forbidden romances come alive. Isabella Montrose had been raised in a palace of illusions. From the outside, her life looked enviable. Pearls draped casually across her wrists, gowns stitched by the finest designers, and an estate so vast that guests often got lost wandering its corridors. The papers called her the jewel of the Montrose family. To society, she was the epitome of fortune and elegance, but behind the velvet curtains, Isabella knew the truth. Every smile she gave at banquets, every carefully measured word, was part of a role she had never auditioned for. Her parents didn't see her as their daughter, not truly. She was an asset, a currency to be traded, a signature to be placed on a contract disguised as a marriage vow. The first time she met Adrian Blackwell, her so-called fiancé, it wasn't romantic. It wasn't even personal. Their families had arranged a dinner, and Isabella realized within moments that Adrian knew the rules of this game just as well as she did. His family controlled a shipping empire that touched nearly every port in Europe, and aligning with the Montroses meant dominance. Adrian was handsome, in that sculpted, effortless way that wealth often produced. He spoke with charm, laughed at the right moments, and addressed Isabella as though she were a prize he had already won. The newspapers would later call their meeting love at first sight. The photographs, with their polite hand-holding and staged smiles, told a story of destiny. Isabella, however, felt the cold iron of inevitability. The engagement came swiftly. Headlines screamed about the union of two dynasties. Her mother planned every detail, from the arrangement of orchids down to the shade of lace on Isabella's veil. The world saw perfection, a fairy tale, the dream every girl supposedly longed for. Isabella stood silently at fittings and rehearsals, wondering if anyone could see the bars of the cage that glittered around her. On the night before the wedding, she sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. The diamonds in her hair sparkled like stars, but her eyes were dull with exhaustion. This isn't a marriage, she thought. It's a merger. Somewhere in the distance, music drifted from the rehearsal dinner. Laughter, glasses clinking, promises of a future built on power, not affection. She remembered the moment her father told her, in his calm, commanding tone, "This union will secure everything we've worked for." "You must understand, Isabella, love is fleeting. Contracts endure," she had wanted to scream, to ask why her happiness was the price of their empire. But instead she nodded, because rebellion was not an option in the Montrose family, and so the wedding dawned. Golden arches of roses framed the aisle, the church heavy with perfume and expectation. Guests whispered in awe as Isabella walked forward, radiant in silk and jewels. Every camera captured her serene smile. Not one of them saw the storm of despair beneath it. When the vows were spoken, when Adrian slipped the ring onto her trembling hand, Isabella felt the weight of chains invisible to everyone else. Applause thundered. The perfect marriage had been sealed, but Isabella knew it was not a marriage. It was a contract, and now she belonged to it. The applause from the wedding had faded, but its echo lingered in Isabella's ears for weeks. The headlines praised her as the luckiest woman alive, celebrating her as though she had been crowned rather than shackled. Magazines printed her smile on their covers, calling it radiant, timeless. Only she knew it was carved from silence and submission. Life inside the Blackwell estate was no fairy tale. The mansion was magnificent, with halls echoing like cathedrals and gardens sculpted into perfect symmetry, but its beauty suffocated her. Every detail of her new existence was planned: what she wore, who she dined with, the charities she was instructed to champion. Adrian's world was one of endless dinners, business meetings cloaked as soirees, and whispered deals sealed behind closed doors. At first, Isabella tried to convince herself that perhaps there could be companionship, if not love. Adrian was polite, attentive in public, and never cruel, but his affection was as cold as the marble floors beneath her feet. He treated her like an ornament, elegant, expensive, displayed to strengthen his image. At night, when the corridors grew quiet, she often found herself alone in her wing of the estate, staring out at the moonlit gardens. asking herself if this would be her forever. The first crack appeared when she overheard a conversation not meant for her ears. Hidden in the shadow of the library doorway, she heard Adrian speaking with his father. "She understands her role," Adrian said calmly. "She'll host the galas, smile for the cameras, and keep our name untarnished. That is all that matters. The Montrose fortune keeps our empire untouchable. Feelings are irrelevant," the words cut sharper than any blade. Isabella's heart, already fragile, shattered completely. She realized then that she was not even considered a partner, but a tool. Her marriage was nothing more than ink on paper and the quiet surrender of her soul. For days afterward, she walked through the estate like a ghost, her laughter gone, her spirit hollow. Yet within her despair, something dangerous began to stir. A question she had never dared to ask: what if I refused to remain a prisoner? One evening, while preparing for yet another gala, Isabella caught her reflection in the mirror. For the first time, she didn't see a daughter or a bride or an heiress. She saw a woman trapped inside someone else's story, and she whispered aloud, "This is not who I am." The rebellion began quietly. She refused to wear the necklace Adrian's mother had gifted her, choosing a simpler piece instead. At the gala, she gave a speech unscripted, speaking from her heart about freedom and purpose, shocking the room into silence. Adrian's disapproving glance burned into her, but she didn't stop. The more she reclaimed fragments of herself, the more alive she felt. When rumors began to swirl in the society pages, whispers that Isabella was no longer the obedient wife the Blackwells had expected, Adrian confronted her. His voice was sharp, his pride wounded. "You are my wife. You will do as you're told." But Isabella, for the first time, did not lower her gaze. "No," she said, her voice steady. "I am not your property. This marriage may be a contract, Adrian, but I am not a clause you can control." In that moment, she knew something had shifted forever. She would not allow her life to remain a transaction. Whether by quiet resistance or by breaking free entirely, she had decided her destiny belonged to her. The newspapers continued to write about the perfect marriage, still fooled by the glittering facade. But behind closed doors, Isabella was no longer the silent heiress. She was a woman awakening, ready to turn the contract into ashes. And though the world still believed she lived inside a fairy tale, Isabella knew the truth. The perfect marriage had died the day it began. What rose in its place was something far more dangerous: her freedom, the end.